thinking all over the world. She did not make the grade because no institution protected her. The final abuse from those who killed her was the usual gendered words floating up. Not a political opponent, but a whore, a slut. Even as we speak of feminist work, we bracket much so that we can just simply present the ideas as if they were just content in a philosophical vacuum. There's much more to say about this. Here is Brooke Rose's representation of another old woman's wisdom, the woman I quoted before, not a frightening bauble, but another kind of gendered voice that would domesticate socio-philosophical rationality in terms of the aging head. I quote, "There is now a fourth revival of Nietzsche in Europe, who says somewhere in the genealogy of morals we must stop trying to change the world. Why? Forgotten." End of quote. The protagonist of Brooke Rose's novel is a dying woman, as is Tilly Olsen, but she has been an academic, although she notes early on in the book that a medical doctor, I quote, has a rank to rest on, in a way a doctor in mere language and literature does. The fact that this female protagonist has been an academic is as important for this book as it is for Coetzee's Elizabeth Costello. She can think public subjects without anguish, unlike Tilly Olsen here. I quote, "A speaking suspicion arises. Aid is given, but in such a way as never to solve anything. Could this shabby treatment be forethought to kill off tiresome overpopulation? The crude process of cheating on the people is inexorable? Well, exor it. Do the young think they now have nothing to complain of? Is that a complaint? Who's talking? To whom?" And so she goes, careening between world and self, objective and subjective, dehors and Descartes. If early on the cart has been put before the horse, mind before matter, even if in a double bind, now at the end the dying female academic writes, I quote, of that scrambled ego, because of the wholly captivating, groundless ground, the extenuated earth, the untrue world, the ominous planet, the hazy galaxy, the lying universe, dehors before Descartes after all. End of quote. The individual in the ecological cycle, Wallace Stevens, beauty is immortal in the flesh. The individual in the ecological cycle, world and universe lie, and the rest threaten in various ways. When the mind seems in control, matter is actually winning surreptitiously on a much bigger other scale. This is the old woman as literary critical academic. Nietzsche transformed into something rather close to my stereotype of myself. Not 83 yet. Let me now move to a different history, a different time, a different class, Mahasweta Devi's statue. It is my memory that I spoke about this novella at Goldsmiths, didn't I? I read the first paragraph in a class last time, but John said no. Even if I did speak of it, first of all it was in a class, but I hope you will see that it is inserted in a different frame, serving a different purpose. I undoubtedly have a special understanding of it because it is written in my first language and I translated it, and I have always claimed that translation is the most intimate act of reading. I probably have a sense of the history of it better because of the accident of my birth in the 40s. But in terms of my developed life, I am much more deeply in the grooves of the lives of the women in Olsen and Christine Brooke Rose. I present it this way so that you can see that identitarianism would be misguided here. I look at the representation of the protagonist of statue with a distant and uncanny wonder in the play of familiar and unfamiliar, whereas with Olsen I can say, there's my mother, if, and with Brooke Rose simply, I would put it this way if I could. Sometimes she can be seen wandering, Mahasweta writes, and then adds, she can be seen means the python Caesar. Very different quotes, you see. Sometimes she can be seen wandering, she can be seen means the python Caesar, end of quote. There is no follow-up to this. Mahasweta is simply explaining her own language use. She can be seen means it is as impersonal a sentence as can be. I invite you to consider the problematic of being the object of an animal's look, as laid out in Derrida's The Animal That Therefore I Am. Derrida describes the tradition of the philosophy that he knows, Western philosophy, as burdened by the autobiographical and the confessional mode of establishing the human being, and therefore generalizing the entire heterogeneous and diversified animal kingdom as singular, simply non-human. In this autobiographical and confessional piece, I would like to think that some impulse of placing this woman, Mahasweta's woman, in a definition outside of the accepted social definition of human as female that makes Mahasweta constitute her as the object of the gaze of a named animal, not animality in general, merely as an explanation of how not to read her own sentence colloquially, rather than as a description of the person outside of the definition. A signal of the undecidable place of outside of the double mind. We cannot understand the python's gaze. Is it significant that the name of the python in Bengali, Ojagar, is the name universally associated with learning the first letter of the alphabet, Ojagar Ashtifiria? This woman is thus because she has been banished outside of the reproduction of the family. Remember, in the previous section, we had seen old women who had placed themselves there or faked to do so as honorary males or patriarchally defined with fear as babos. Let me give you a quick summary of the story so that I can get on with my argument. She is the daughter of a rural priest attached to a wealthy non-Brahmin family. The groom runs off on her wedding night. She is therefore technically a child widow. The master's son falls in love with her. Because this marriage is impossible, she's higher in caste and of course lower in not really class, but standing. And she's a widow. Because this marriage is impossible, another marriage is arranged for him. She herself is within this ideology, obviously without what Tema Kaplan had defined in the 80s as female consciousness, perhaps because it was a generalization of a specific situation. This one is specific too, of course, and we must attend to details. She watches the wedding from afar. He catches her eye while he is being wedded and runs away, breaks the wedding. Joining a, quote, terrorist, unquote, by which is meant armed struggle against British imperialism. The story is set in the 20s of the last century. Joining a terrorist group, and he inexpertly attempts to shoot a white man and is hanged. Dulali, the woman, is banished outside of the village to live like an animal. A poor, bare, forked animal. The Shakespearean description of Mad Lear, which, with its adjective forked, miraculously matches a woman more than a man. You remember the sentence, Elizabeth's sentence. You are crested rather than forked and so on. With its adjective forked, miraculously matches a woman more than a man. A researcher in the story looks at papers relating to the terrorist movement after independence and finds letters never sent to this woman. It made it public. The world of the humans intervenes. She is threatened to keep quiet. Of course she does, she would. She couldn't have done otherwise, and so on. A statue is built to her long-lost suitor. This is the story. Mahasweta is taking us here into a thematic rather larger than women's access to the public sphere. Third-person narrative without too much free indirect discourse can provide a quick fix in not putting Descartes before Dehors. It does not last long. It is a rhetorical ruse. But she buys a little time out by that sentence about the python's gaze in the 3-page description of the woman as forked animal. Without entering Dulali's consciousness, she makes visible a critique of nationalism to the Bengali reading public, within a critique of reproductive heteronormativity where Dulali is a figure, because his entire joining up and getting hanged and so on and so forth is shown as a kind of ridiculous thing running off like this. And there are other models, Sharapchandra, etc., that one can think of, but let's not go there now. Without entering Dulali's consciousness, she makes visible a critique of nationalism to the Bengali reading public within a critique of reproductive heteronormativity where Dulali is a figure. Let us remember this word figure. Configuration is our weapon in protecting the fragility of reason, compromised by the requirements of the alibi of rational choice running capitalism. We will see that, almost in a parodic reversal of Brooke Rose's text, she gives us a glimpse of the old woman's consciousness, Descartes, at the end of the story. She can just about manage to do this by not aspiring to inhabit the other space, defined as the liminal space of a textual double bind through the trace of the author. this woman does not resemble Mahasweta. Reproductive heteronormativity is a simple notion, the normal thing for not just human beings but higher animal beings is for the male and female to copulate, to reproduce, and thus to continue life on Earth. Therefore, this is normal. It is upstream from sexual preference. We are in a double bind with